Game 2 of the Western Conference Finals between the Golden State Warriors and Dallas Mavericks is here. Connor Letourneau, he covers the team like no other for the San Francisco Chronicle, joins me. We're going to preview that game. We're going to talk about Stephen Curry, a great story Connor wrote on him. It's going to be all Warriors as always. Let's bring it. This is Locked On Warriors.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get podcasts. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, it's where the game starts. You can follow Connor Letourneau on Twitter at CON_CHRON, Con_Cron. You can follow me, Cyrus Saatsaz, on Twitter at DogSurfRoadshow. Connor, 2 questions to start things off for you, because I respect your basketball insights, your opinions, everything about the Warriors more than pretty much any other. Give us your recap of Game 1. I'm curious to know how much we should read into that leading into tonight's Game 2.
You and I we'll lift the curtain a little bit. You and I were texting a little bit during that Game 1 game because, I've said many times on this podcast, I listen to almost every podcast that you do. And I had on my way to the arena that day for Game 1, I had been listening to the show that you did, with the Mavericks guy, the guy who does Locked On Mavericks. And he had picked the Mavericks in 6. And I texted you, kind of giving that guy a hard time through you because I just thought that was a ridiculous take. I thought it was a little bit of a homerish take. I felt like anyone who understands the Warriors and understands the history of the Warriors and how they defend teams would know that the Warriors are a very good matchup for the Mavericks. The Warriors match up really well with the Mavericks. I feel like they're a much better matchup. The Mavericks are a much better matchup for the Warriors than the Grizzlies were. The Grizzlies did a lot of things that the Grizzlies were great at a lot of things that the Warriors struggle at. And the Mavericks do a lot of things that the Warriors have seen a million times. I hate nothing against this Mavericks team because I think it's really impressive that they've gotten this far. And, I think they're ahead of schedule as a franchise. So this season has been a win. They should feel really, really good about that. But right now, I do feel like they're a worse version of the James Harden Rockets. They play almost the exact same way. They don't have as much firepower. They're not as deep. Their role players aren't as good. They don't have a Chris Paul to be, the Robin to James Harden's Batman. Jalen Brunson's a good player. He's having a breakout year. But I wrote in my story the other day, the Warriors have 5 players who are objectively 100% better than the Mavericks' second best player. And I think what we saw in Game 1 was that the Warriors know exactly how to defend the Mavericks. The Warriors know exactly how to handle them. The Warriors have a really sound game plan for handling this type of team. And as long as they play hard and play with precision, they should not only win this series handily, but they should win it each game relatively convincingly. Now, yes, the Mavericks might steal a game. This could go 5, possibly even 6. But there is no way after seeing Game 1 that I can see a world where the Warriors lose this series. They're just such a better overall team. And that's just the reality of this situation.
No, I'm totally with you. I love that you brought up the Rockets because you're right. That Rockets team, even like role players like PJ Tucker, were like a type of player that the Mavericks don't have. Like, I don't see anyone in the Mavericks being like a defensive stopper. That's one of the huge things they're missing. Like, they don't have any one guy that can cause legitimate defensive problems. They lack size. There's no Clint Capella. You're right. This is just an incredible matchup. And yeah, man, you should have seen all the comments that were coming on the YouTube side of things, especially like Mavericks fans, man. I was getting DMs on my Instagram, which is super personal, just ripping me just from random strangers, dude. Like there was legitimate hate, but I'm totally with you, man. It's just even if you look at this objectively, I don't know how you can see the Mavericks.
It's not a personal attack on the Mavericks.
Exactly.
You're just objectively judging basketball. Also, it helps when you have history and understanding of the Warriors. Part of the reason why the Warriors can handle this team is because they did it multiple times against the Rockets already. They know, and a lot of the key players on the Warriors were on those teams. You still have Klay, you still have Steph, you still have Draymond, you still have Kevon Looney, and so that's a huge reason why I think that is not going to be too difficult for the Warriors. And you look ahead to game 2, what major adjustments can the Mavericks realistically that would change the series? I can't think of anything. I mean,
you're right.
There's nothing
I do think
that they can do that's just going to suddenly shock the Warriors. It's not like, the group pulled a little bit of a rabbit out of their hat with Steven Adams, and the trajectory of that series changed. I went out and they went bigger with Jaren Jackson and Steven Adams, and the Warriors said later, this is like 2 different series. They had to completely start over the game plan, and that was part of why that series got really interesting, was because there was a whole new to it. Whereas I just don't see anything the Mavericks can do that would be on par with type of adjustment.
You're absolutely right, man. And that game 1 was impressive for a myriad of reasons. Steve Kerr constantly mixing it up defensively. 1 minute he's going man, 1 minute he's throwing like a 2-1-2 zone. He was throwing some really crazy things out there that was stifling the Mavericks. And the one thing I'll say that worries me a little bit about game 2, I don't think the Warriors are going to lose, but some of those shots that were missed in game 1 will fall. Now, a lot of people, especially the Warriors haters, and there's a lot of those in the media, and, they want to find any excuse to give hope, a beacon of life for this Mavericks team. They're like, well, the shots didn't fall, right? Like Charles Barkley, enemy number 1, and I'm almost positive it's a bit at this point, his hate of the Warriors. But, he mentions, well, those shots are going to fall. It's like, well, and my response to that is, and Connor, I'd love to know if you agree or disagree, is like the Warriors were in a similar situation the last round where they had a lot of shots from Steph, Klay, and the pool party especially that were not falling. And a lot of those were fairly open looks, but it's one thing when you're putting up a shot that's contested. It's another thing when a guy is running full steam at you, who's really long, with those hands coming right at your face. Like, those might have looked like uncontested shots the Mavericks were putting up, but there were people racing at them every time. The hustle of the Warriors is underplayed. Their conditioning is underplayed. They can run you out the gym better than anyone else. And that's why I think even if Luka plays better, even if they make a few more shots in game 2, I don't think it's enough. So are you predicting a victory for the Warriors tonight? It's safe to say.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I would say double-digit victory. I would say like 10-ish points is what I would say. I think that the Mavericks are going to knock down more shots, and I think that it's going to be closer. But I still think that the Warriors win convincingly. I think the Warriors are taking this really seriously. I don't think they're going to overlook the Mavericks. I think that they're going to do everything they can to try to get this done in 4 or 5 so that they can rest up for the finals, because whoever they play in the finals, it's going to be a much tougher test than this probably will be, especially if it's the Celtics. I know you've talked about the Celtics. I think the Celtics very much if it is the Celtics, I think the Celtics very much could beat the Warriors in a best-of-7 series. So the Warriors want to do everything they can to be in a good position entering that. But yeah, I agree with you. I mean, the Mavericks talked a lot about, we just didn't make shots after the game. They said, we just didn't knock down shots, open shots. We had a ton of open looks. Okay, you might have had some open looks earlier in the game, but in the second half, you really did not have a lot of open looks. I mean, the Warriors' defense was superb. And one of the big reasons why I feel confident the Warriors are going to win this pretty handily is because of their defense on Doncic. And one thing I would love to talk about is I'm very impressed by the Warriors' defensive game plan on Doncic and really on all these superstar guys that they've faced in the playoffs. A lot of teams, when they face a transcendent talent like a Doncic or a Ja Morant or a Jokic, the go-to for them is we got to just blitz them and send tons of traps and double teams and just send so much coverage. And the Warriors don't do that. We trust our guys. We're really capable defender on you, and we're not gonna let anyone else hurt us. and we're gonna, we're gonna defend this guy on one. And that to me says a lot about the organization. It shows a level of confidence and trust that maybe other coaches don't have in their players. And I think it's part of why the Warriors are the Warriors. And so for them to just throw out Wiggins out there and say, hey, Wiggins, man, do your thing, do your best on him. We're rarely, if ever, going to double team Doncic. And then we're going to swarm all the, we're going to have guys on, we're going to have hands on all the other shooters so he can't kick out to open shooters along the perimeter. Because as good as Doncic is offensively, he's just as good as a facilitator. And so that was a huge factor. And their Warriors are going to continue to stick with that game plan. And I do think Doncic will have some better games, but I feel good about that blueprint for the Warriors going forward.
I agree. And that it starts with Andrew Wiggins, who deserves a ton of respect. People sleep on him routinely. And I get it. I mean, he has bad games occasionally, but he's also a fantastic defender, and he's shown that in this series. Look, if you're really
why is Wiggins so, I don't want to say hated, but it just like, no matter what he does, no matter what he does, like he gets criticism. And it's just,
he does.
Even when he was an all-star starter, it was like, oh, the worst all-star. And it's like, look, give the guy a break.
I said that. I know, and that sounds bad, but it's ultimately, I don't want to become. I get the homer accusation, and look, I'm not. I can call negatives out when I see it.
I'm just saying, like, given where this guy was in his career 2 years ago, the fact that he was in an all-star game by
impressive
any measure is impressive.
Like it is. No, agreed, man.
Like this is a win. Okay, and I personally felt
100%.
Like a legitimate all-star. I think all-star starter was a bit much, but I did think, given the makeup of the Western Conference and who was injured and stuff, that he was a legitimate all-star. And look, I mean, he's given the Warriors exactly what they need, and he has proven a lot in these playoffs. This guy had, I think he had played like 5 total playoff games ever before these playoffs, and he has been, and I feel crazy saying this, but he has been probably the Warriors' best player in these playoffs. When you factor in the defense and the consistency offensively, he's been incredibly efficient. He's rebounded at a really high level. He's been leading them in rebounds. Yes. He had one of the best net ratings on the team. He has been guarding Ja Morant and now doing a great job on Doncic. I mean, when you factor all that in, he has been their best player. Has not had like those transcendent performances that we're used to seeing from him. I'm hopeful that he will at some point in this series, but I mean, it's impressive. It's very impressive.
It's very impressive. Someday we can break this down more, but the Warriors really did fleece the Timberwolves with that trade, man. And thank you, Kevin Durant, for agreeing to the sign and trade, which started the whole thing. Wiggins has been a fantastic fit. I'm 100% with you. He does not get the respect he deserves. My whole criticism of the All-Stars thing was him being a starter. And I'm not saying he didn't deserve it. It's just, it was a very weak overall playing field. I mean, who are you going to put in over him? It was just a addition by subtraction kind of thing. But he's been phenomenal. No disagreement here, man. You're absolutely right. What I love about one of the many things I love about the NBA is that sometimes you can focus on individuals and how they do. And PrizePicks is a great platform if you want to bet on individual or even team performances. It's all about over-unders. All you do is you pick 2 to 5 players if you go to PrizePicks and an over-under on their projections. For example, Stephen Curry might have 25 as a point total, and you can bet tonight he might score over that or he might score under that. And you can win up to 10 times on any entry. It's just you versus the projected numbers. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's that easy. PrizePicks is safe and offers fast withdrawals, and that's really one of my favorite parts about it. If you want your money back, it's done like that, unlike a lot of other gambling websites. And for a limited time, PrizePicks has an exclusive no-brainer of an offer for all of our users. Users get $50 for free if a player in your first PrizePicks entry scores just a single point. But you must use the code NBA. That's right. This is an exclusive offer available to Locked On fans. Sign up today and use the code NBA for $50 free if a player in your first PrizePicks entry scores just a single point. And today's also brought to you by Built Bars. And they now got the today they're hyping up the brownie batter puffs. We were talking about those birthday cake puffs a little while ago. If you love brownies, brownie batter is obviously a delectable treat. People can eat half the batter just while you're making the brownies. And Built Bar now has browner batty puffs. And here's the beauty of these things with Built Bars. They're packed with protein, which is good for you. They're the building blocks of cells, 17 grams on average for every Built Bar. Whereas candy bars are usually not packed with protein, but candy bars do have sugar, on average 30 grams, whereas your Built Bar only has 4, and they're all covered in 100% real chocolate. Go to Built.com right now to get your browner batty puffs or any flavor of Built Bars you want. It's Built.com. This is the website. Use the promo code LOCK15 and get 15% off your order. Again, use the promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at Built.com.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. Make sure to go check out the Locked On NBA Big Board. It's funny how most people are talking about the NBA draft while Dub Nation is focused on the NBA Finals and the championship, the Western Conference Finals. But host Rafael Barlow from NBA Draft Junkies and author of the NBA Big Board newsletter is joined by Richard Stamen, Sam Ferris, and Leif Thulin, giving fans an in-depth look into the NBA draft, mock draft, player rankings, and, of course, the big boards. It's free and available wherever you get podcasts. Connor Letourneau is free and available on Twitter. You can follow him on Twitter at CON_CHRON, Con_Cron. He routinely produces phenomenal content for the San Francisco Chronicle pertaining mostly to the Golden State Warriors. A newer story, and you and I were talking about this before we started recording today, is your newest piece, a fantastic piece. It's a profile piece on Stephen Curry and more specifically his graduation from Davidson. Remarkable. I mean, great investigative research pertaining to his background with Davidson. It shows how humble of a human being he is. Was there anything in your story that stuck out to you that really surprised you?
I think just the thing that was kind of my biggest takeaway that hopefully came across in the piece is just that this was a legitimate process. You know, he really did the work. He really did earn his degree in a way that any other student would be expected to do. It wasn't like he was given a pass because he's Steph Curry. And obviously this is a great news story for Davidson. I mean, I talked to the athletic director at Davidson, and he literally said, he's like, look, we could have given him an honorary degree. We could have, done something to honor him, and we could have still, probably made an exception and retired his jersey. But he didn't want that. Steph was even told a couple years ago, the Davidson changed their requirements for being in the Athletic Hall of Fame there, where you didn't have to necessarily have a degree from the university, but you had to have just left in good academic standing. And Steph was told, hey, you left in good academic standing. We can put you in the Hall of Fame right now. And he said, no, that's not, I don't want that. Like, I want to go about this the right way. I want to get my degree. And then we can do all that stuff, the Hall of Fame, the jersey retirement, all that good stuff. And he did it. He literally was mid playoffs and was finishing research papers on the plane, team plane, and staying up late. And when he would get to, I led with an anecdote of him having a late practice in Minneapolis in February, and he jetted to the team hotel to hop on a Zoom to meet with a professor. It was impressive, especially when you consider that he's a father of 3, that he has tons of endorsement obligations, tons of philanthropic obligations, and by the way, is the best player on a title contender. His time management is incredible. I mean, he, full disclosure, I was on an email thread a couple of days ago with some of his professors at Davidson about this story, and then I get an email at midnight from Steph, and it's just like, dude, you're putting in work on this non-Warrior stuff, at midnight, in the middle of the playoffs. It's impressive.
It's incredibly. I tell everybody who ever asks, Stephen Curry is the genuine article. He's There's nothing fake about him, and he's just a genuinely good human being. What stuck out to me in this piece particularly is his work ethic. To me, the people I connect with the most are those who are intellectually curious, and that story revealed to me that he is that. He respects academics tremendously. I love the anecdote from 2011. I forgot there was a lockout briefly then, where Stephen Curry actually, this clearly was on his mind during his entire playing career, because in 2011 he actually went back to classes, and I could just picture, even, you're right, when we were talking about this off the air, in 2011 Stephen Curry wasn't the superstar he is now, but in Davidson circles he was, and to have Stephen Curry sitting next to you in a classroom, I'd be tripping balls if I was a college student.
Yeah, I mean, he like physically, because Davidson's a really small liberal arts school, and they didn't really have a lot of online offerings. So for him to get his degree, he had to physically be on campus. So he literally went back. And part of the reason why this was able to happen now is because of the pandemic. Davidson, like every other school in the country, had to expand their online offerings a lot. So he was able to do it more online. And he really didn't have that much more work to do, because he had knocked out 3 classes during the lockout, which is an incredibly efficient use of his time.
It's a fantastic piece, highly recommended. It's available just simply by either subscribing to the San Francisco Chronicle's website to get a subscription, or for the print newspaper, either way. And one last thing that stuck out to me on this story, and again, parenting is so key, and Sonia really stuck out as a mother who, you look, discipline. I respect discipline, and you could tell she's a disciplinarian, but she clearly has the mother's touch on that discipline. And kudos to the whole Curry family. Bravo. That was just a great piece. And just, if you didn't like Stephen Curry before, I don't know how you don't like him now, but I don't know many people who dislike him. And all it did is make me like the guy more. I didn't think that was possible.
I've been covering Steph for 6 years now. And one of the first things that people always ask me when they find out what my job is, if someone I just meet, through mutual friends or something, is what's Steph really like? And a thing I always tell them is he's exactly what you think he is. I mean, yes. Steph is the genuine article. He's exactly what you think he is. He's an incredibly humble, sincere, genuine person. And every story, every profile I've ever done on him, like, it just reveals that more and more. He's a special human being. And I mean, I can't help but put myself in his shoes, and I'm like, would I feel the need to go get my Davidson degree when I'm, Steph Curry and, worth hundreds of millions of dollars and all these things? Like, I probably wouldn't, but he did. So that's pretty cool.
It's so cool, and a great story. Kudos. Shifting gears back to the game, our partners at BetOnline.net, they continue to be the #1 source for all your betting needs and sports information. I'm on BetOnline.net right now. I'm looking at the line for tonight's Warriors-Mavericks game. Game 1, they were favored by 5. They covered that easily. They covered it by 20 points. And now here in Game 2, they're favored by 6. The over-under is 213.5. Any feelings or thoughts about that for the gamblers out there?
I think that I like the Warriors there. Like I said earlier, I think the Warriors are going to win by like 10-ish. So I would take that. I just think that the Warriors are a much deeper, more balanced team, and they have a really good defensive game plan for the Mavericks. And I just don't see a world where the Mavericks steal any of these games at Chase Center. If the Mavericks steal a game or two, it'll probably be in Dallas, but I don't see it happen at Chase Center, and I don't even think it's going to be like that close. Like, it could be relatively close, and then the Warriors pull away in the mid fourth quarter or something like that. But I mean, I know it was just one game. I just feel like we learned so much from Game 1. Yep. Like, I know it was just one game, and that's the old sports cliche, but there's not a world where you can watch that game and not like the Warriors are just far and away the better team.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. And I don't want to sleep on the Mavericks, but you're right. It's just, you look at the personnel, it is very one-sided. And again, the Warriors are favored by 6, and I cannot discount the Friday night Chase Center crowd. That is, like, to me, that is an extra level of home court advantage when you have a Friday or even a Saturday night, but especially Friday night when you got the work crowd just going straight to the arena, 6 o'clock start. They're all down in booze. I'm stoked on it, man. I can't wait to hear that crowd through the TV screens. And you all folks can bet on that. Just go to betonline.net to get the latest odds, news, and sports developments, including this year's basketball playoffs, Major League Baseball scores, fights, and even next season's NFL futures. They're your continued source for all your sports wagering information, from live betting to playoffs, esports, and more. Bet Online. It's where the game starts.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. We're free and available on every podcast platform. You can follow Connor Letourneau on Twitter at CON_CHRON. You can follow me at DocSurFrocho. Is it too soon to look ahead, or at a minimum, let's do this? What are your thoughts? Let's talk Celtics Heat. How about that? Let's play it safe. What are your thoughts of that series so far? Shifting gears real quick, because there's only 4 teams remaining, and the Warriors, if they advance, they will play the winner of that series. I think the Heat sorely need Kyle Lowry. It's one thing to play the Celtics without Marcus Smart and Al Horford, but when they're fully stocked, that's a different story. The Heat, again, without Kyle Lowry, I don't know if they can do it. With him, yeah, I think it's an open.
I mean, Max Strus has been a nice little story, former D2 guy in the NBA. But if he's starting for you, like, how are you a legitimate contender?
Right.
That's I can't fully get over that. I talked to Wes Goldberg, obviously your predecessor on Locked On Warriors, covers the Heat.
Love Wes.
And I very much trust his opinion when it comes to the Heat. And he's he's a Miami guy. Like he would admit that he can be a little homerish at times about the Heat, but he straight up told me entering this series, the Celtics are a far and away better team than the Heat. And so I was a little surprised by what happened in game 1. And then when we saw it happen in game 2, I was like, okay, that makes more sense. Maybe the Celtics just were a little, had a quicker turnaround and didn't have as much preparation time. And that's why they struggled a little bit in game 1. But now we're starting to see what the Celtics are really capable of.
Yeah.
And so I expect the Celtics to win that series. And I think that it'll be an amazing showdown in the finals if it is the Warriors and Celtics. I think that it could go either way. The Celtics are so good defensively. They've been probably the best team in the NBA since the All-Star break. I just really like their mix of youth and length and athleticism. In some ways they're like a better version of the Grizzlies.
In some
ways. It's not a direct comparison, but you know what I mean. And so it'll be really interesting. But the Heat are a really well-run organization. Eric Spoelstra is one of, if not the best coach in the NBA. I think very highly of Eric Spoelstra.
Agreed.
I mean, the fact that he was getting Heat teams with zero talent, absolutely zero talent, to the playoffs, and now he gets a little bit of talent, and they're in contention for the finals. So, I definitely wouldn't overlook them if it is the Heat, for sure.
I'm with you. And again, it's just the Jimmy Butler factor is a wild card. When he goes off, I do feel like he's virtually unstoppable. I want to quickly play this soundbite, by the way. There's a lot of great sound bites over the last 2 days, but this one was from Klay Thompson. And he was talking about, he was comparing himself to other grade 2 guards. And I do think Klay belongs in the discussion. I'm certainly not putting him above like a Jordan or anything like that, but here was Klay talking about himself versus other great two-way guards in the history of the game.
Klay, you were obviously, with pre-injury, you were considered one of the top defenders in the league. And Anthony just asked you a question about defense. We all know that the shooting gets most of the praise for you, but are you trying to get back to that level defensively? Is that something that you have strived to do coming back from that injury?
Absolutely. I'm trying. It's hard. I mean, marking the best player every night for 40 minutes is not easy, and going to get buckets on the other end, but it's something I love to do. All the best 2 guards to ever play the game play. on that side, so I just try to follow the same old.
Yeah, there you go. And again, that's and I hope my internet connection is okay here. I'm noticing some sort of issue. I hope I'm connected. But anyways, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, Klay, again, I feel like that's one aspect of his game that he's still trying to get back. The game 6 against the Grizzlies really, really impressed me. I think he really stepped up on the defensive side. I also think he also defensively played fantastic against the Mavericks. What are your thoughts on Klay? Because that does seem to be the obvious shortcoming in his comeback, his defense. What are your thoughts?
I mean, he is not near the defender he was pre-injuries. I mean, he was an all-defensive team guy. He was probably, in a lot of ways, he was like very similar defensively to what Andrew Wiggins is now, only maybe, a bit better one-on-one. He was one of the best one-on-one defenders in the NBA. You could put him on the opponent's top scorer and feel very comfortable any given night. And that's definitely not the case anymore. I mean, he was barely in the mix at all with Doncic in game 1. And it's just because the Warriors don't feel comfortable with him in those situations. He's been on more of the secondary type guys, which is kind of where he needs to be right now. And honestly, him not being the caliber of defender that he was pre-injuries is a huge thing for this team. Yeah. I mean, if he was still at that level, the Warriors would be so potent defensively because, Andrew Wiggins has been playing so well. Obviously, you have Draymond. They have a bunch of other guys who know how to play or in the right spots of the floor, guys like Kevon Looney and so forth. And so, if he was still that guy, it would be huge. But, because he's not, you have to feel very thankful that Andrew Wiggins is playing the way he is because, if Gary Payton II was healthy, I think Gary Payton II would be getting a lot of this time on Doncic. Gary Payton II is built so well for those types of matchups, and I think that he actually might even be a better option defensively on Doncic than Wiggins. And I think we didn't talk a lot about Klay's defense toward the end of the regular season and early in the playoffs because they had Gary Payton II. But now that they don't have Gary Payton II available, it definitely highlights and underscores more what they're missing defensively from Klay.
Oh, I totally agree, man. Gary Payton II was and is a vitally important part of this team. I'm glad you brought that up. 2 more points before we wrap things up here on Locked On Warriors today. Gary Payton II, I mean, there's all of a sudden there were reports that he might play in this series. He could be available as early as next Wednesday. Most people saw the video, and if you haven't, you can follow either Connell or Letourneau or myself. The video has been blasted all over social media where he's practicing putting up shots without a brace, without a cast on that elbow that he broke. There's a brace there now. Stephen Curry was just watching him shoot the whole time. As an insider, you're around this team more than pretty much any other. What's the realistic aspect? What can we realistically expect from Gary Payton II? Are we going to see him, in your opinion? I mean, at any point in the postseason, what are your thoughts?
I would be surprised if he returned in this series. I really would be. I mean, I said when he went down with the injury that I'd be surprised if he returned at all in the playoffs. And
same.
I still think it's a little bit of a long shot. I think there's a chance he could return in the finals if there's an extended break between the series. But they're not going to throw him out there unless he's at or close to 100%. And I mean, he broke his arm. He broke his elbow. Like, that's a significant injury. And it just happened, a little over a week ago? So,
I mean, a week and a half, something like that. Yeah.
A week and a half ago. So, I mean, usually you're looking at least a month for recovery on something like that. I do think that he's progressing really well and that's why some people are optimistic. But if you listen to everyone within the Warriors organization, they've given no indication that there's any expectation for him to play in this series. Steve is always very kind of somewhat negative about it. He called it a long shot. He said, let's be realistic here. Gary Payton II himself has said, look, I'm not necessarily expecting to be available this series. But if he can be, I do think they'll probably throw him out in the finals, in the Western Conference Finals, or sorry, NBA Finals.
NBA Finals.
Just because he is so important defensively. I mean, this guy was starting playoff games for a reason. He is I think he's one of the 7 most important players on this team, which is saying a lot, given that this is a guy who was on a 10-day contract last season and was in the G League. So he is a bona fide top 8 rotation player on any team in the NBA. I don't care who it is. He has proven that. I think very highly of him. Anyone who has followed me knows that I covered him at Oregon State, my first job at college. So I've known him for a long time, and he's legit. And they would benefit a lot from him in this series and definitely in the NBA Finals.
Yeah, and you had a great mailbag where you talked about the future of the team and what your expectations were. Again, just read Connor Letourneau's content. He writes fantastic stuff for the San Francisco Chronicle. Any last thoughts? Anything you feel like we missed today? I mean, Game 2 is tonight at 6 p.m. Pacific time at Chase Center. Again, I'm expecting a raucously sauced crowd. I love that Friday night Chase Center crowd. I do. I love it, man. I'm starting to see some similarities between Roracle and Chase. It's never going to be the same, but they're bringing it. Kudos. Any last thoughts? Anything we do think we missed that we should have covered?
Anyone who's out there, if you have any recs for restaurants or cocktail bars or anything in Dallas, let me know. This will be the most extended stay I've ever had in Dallas. Usually you're just there for one night in and out. So probably going to explore the city a little bit. So yeah, that's all I got.
Oh, there you go. Beautiful. And again, you can follow Connor Letourneau on Twitter at @CON_CHRON. Con_Cron. Fantastic work for the San Francisco Chronicle, including your newest piece again on Stephen Curry and his graduation. Just a great profile piece. It's exactly what you're looking for. And then your mailbag again. You wrote some fascinating content there about the future of this team. But let's focus on the present for now. We got some important games coming up.
The present informs the future, though. The present informs the future. That's why I've been writing a lot about like, can they re-sign Gary Payton II? What's going to happen with Wiggins? Because what's happening right now is going to inform what happens this summer. So true. I do think it's worth talking about at times.
That's fair. Yeah. Well, for another show, we're running up against the clock here. But again, just to highlight as an example, 2 months ago, you were on this show saying Jordan Poole was expected to get a 4-year, $80 million offer. In your latest mailbag, you jumped that up to 4 years, 100, and that's because of the postseason. That's a huge part of it. So, great stuff, man. Great stuff. And Dub Nation, have fun tonight. It should be a great game. Just to let people know, by the way, I'm going to do a second show today. It'll be a live post-game show. If you want to jump on the YouTube live chat and jump in, I try to address everything. Connor, the invite's open. I know you stay at the arena and write, but if you have half an hour to spare, man,
I'll be in writing mode. But I
got you. Understood. All good. But regardless, for anyone listening, if you want to jump on, I'm going to go make it live and I'll record it for the weekend, so you have some content to recap Game 2. Thank you, everyone. Connor, thanks as always, brother. It's always a pleasure, man. And take care, everyone. Later.